when it takes our job, a lot of us are going to be fake surprised. And I'm going to be going, you ushered that in. You brought that tool in because you were told it was going to make your job faster.
So we have a lot to cover. So I'm going to jump right in. And I think I know a lot about you. I know a lot of people know a lot about you. But what's something that a lot of people don't know about you?
What is something that a lot of people don't know about me? I'm going to pick a couple of quick ones. First of all, I'm not tall. I get that one a lot from people who haven't met me. I think because of my big personality, they expect me to be really tall, and I'm 5'4" or 163-ish centimeters. And so people are like, oh, one thing you might not know about me is I am a classically trained opera singer. So when I joke about flying in, fixing everything I can, singing a few songs, that's pretty accurate. I really do show up places and sing. Something else people might not know about me. I don't know. Many people know I'm a mom of 5 dogs and married to a cool guy. I don't know. I'm usually a no secrets person. So it's like, what don't people know about me?
No, that's true. I know when you came to speak at a UX research and strategy meetup in Dallas many years ago, you sang at our meetup. I remember that very well. The crowd was like in awe.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I guess if someone wants to know something about me, they can ask, but I'm usually no secrets.
Sounds good. So, Debbie, what was your journey into user experience? How did you get into it?
Yeah, my journey is certainly not something someone could replicate now because it was of the times. Basically, I started around 1995 as what we were then calling a website designer. And I had a little website company and where someone else did the art and the programming because everyone knows I'm not a great artist. And in our second year of business, we got some really famous companies. And so we were able to build up our little website agency to something. And eventually, about 10 years later, I started hearing more about UX and I hadn't known about it. And all of a sudden, I was like, wait, there's a name for these things that I'm doing. And it was one of those things where I was just kind of self taught along the way. And then I found out that there was a formalized thing. And so some things I was already doing pretty well, and some things I was not doing well and had to learn a little bit better. And then in 2010, I moved to San Francisco so that I could put some real UX jobs on my resume because I'd only had my own consulting and freelancing, and not everybody respected that. And so once I did the San Francisco thing in 2010, and I was there for about 7 years, that pretty well solidified me. I was able to build up a good reputation there for being a real go to, hit the ground running, Mary Poppins, is your stuff really on fire, call Debbie kind of character. And then since then, obviously UX and things have evolved, which I think we'll be talking about. But that was how I kind of got into it.
Yeah. You mentioned Mary Poppins. For those who may not be familiar with that film, tell us what that means and how you associate with the Mary Poppins character.
Yeah, I hadn't associated with it really. What happened was I had so many consulting and contracting jobs in San Francisco that more than once, and I think more than twice, when I was leaving a job or I'd been visiting that office and then I was leaving, people would say, "Bye, Mary Poppins." I think that for people who have seen the original Mary Poppins movie, she shows up because somebody needs something fixed and she figures out what's going wrong and she kicks some butt and whips people into shape, and the medicine has to go down whether you like it or not, and sings a bunch of songs and literally flies away. It's a flying character. And so it was kind of funny that people were calling me that. And so I just figured, I guess I'll adopt that as a name since most people would have a positive association with her and the Disney movie.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. I forgot about that song, a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. Can you say that you have provided that sugar to help that medicine go down?
I am not always the most sugar coated person. I remember going into a consulting job a couple of years ago, and I was answering to a C-level person who was hoping I was going to diagnose and fix the evils. And when I started getting a sense of what some of the evils were, I went back to that C-level person and I said, "Can I name names?" And she said, "We all know who you're talking about. You might as well." Can I be blunt in this? To me, the amount of sugar I have to put on something relates to the people around me. If they're saying, "No, we really need to hear this, please just go there," I will present it professionally and intelligently, not in a picking on people or accusatory way, but because I still come from a family of lawyers, I have to make a good argument. It has to be professional, but I'm not afraid to say the things.
And not packaging it up in a compliment sandwich.
Or the poop sandwich, especially with a job like that, please just call it as you see it and tell us what to do about it. It doesn't make sense to be like, "Oh, this is all so good. You're so fantastic." It was kind of like, "Look, you're a very successful company in spite of all of these things that are going on. And there's probably some things here you could fix and be even more successful."
I've been in a company where I've been told, "Don't be a troublemaker, Jen. Don't bring us bad news, Jen." Have you ever been in that position?
Luckily, not that much. Maybe it's my reputation preceding me, as they say, but very rarely have I been told that. So someone tried that on me at the aforementioned consulting job. That person was trying to make me look not so good in some of these meetings. And after I read some of the bad news out loud, this person said in front of some very high level people something like, "You're just being antagonistic." My response was, "Well, everything on these slides are quotes from all of you. I interviewed all of you to get this information, so I'm not the antagonist. I'm the mirror. If you'd like to apply an adjective to me, if that helps you feel better, go ahead, throw some adjectives at me. But here's the mirror."
Ouch.
I was getting all these back channel things from leadership in the meeting. "It's not you. You're fine. You did a good job. This is all true."
Debbie, what is on your mind these days? I know a lot. You have your own YouTube channel. You are a successful book author. I know you're posting on LinkedIn. You're everywhere. There it is. Customers Know You Suck. I absolutely have that book too.
Thank you. Thank
Love it. So, yes, what is on your mind these days?
If I had to pick something, like I just did Jason Knight's hot take, I said I want to talk about how the democratization, which some people know I call dilution, democratization, we've been focusing on the wrong thing because we thought the end game for democratization was product managers are going to take our jobs, or engineers are going to try to design screens, and we really didn't see what was coming beyond that. And my prediction around that is, by creating a universe in which anybody can do our jobs, and we don't care if those jobs are being done well or not, and there's no accountability, there's no governance, there's no standards, anybody can do research and anybody can design, and we don't care because evidently we love failure. We're actually opening the door for AI to do our jobs badly. AI will take your job sooner than you thought, because right now a lot of UX people think AI can't take my job. AI does my job badly. Why would anybody replace me with AI doing my job badly? Here's what the slippery slope looks like. If it's okay to replace your job or partially replace it or fake augment it with, let's say, a product manager or a marketer or a developer doing your job badly, why can't AI do your job badly? And that's been kind of my hot take lately, which is uncharacteristic for me. I don't have good advice after that. Usually it's like, "Here's what's broken, here's what to do about it." And in this case, it's like, "Here's what I see coming, and I'm not too sure how to get out of the way of that boulder."
Let's talk a little bit more about that AI coming into the UX world. Why do you feel that that could take our jobs?
It's designed to take our jobs. It will help you do your job, is the spoonful of sugar. Design thinking was going to make everybody care about design and prioritize the user experience. We keep getting fed these weird Trojan horse narratives that so far haven't been true. Lean UX didn't give us a seat at the table. Lean UX disempowered us. Design thinking didn't give us a seat at the table. It disempowered us. Democratization didn't give us a seat at the table. It helped us get laid off. The messages we got about these things didn't match the messages everybody else got about these things. And so we're getting the message AI, it's really going to help you do your work better. You're just going to be so much faster. You're going to get more done. But like, that's not necessarily what other people are being told about the tools that we're being sold on. They're being told you don't need a researcher. AI is going to write the research plan, tell you what to ask. AI is going to ask those questions if through a chatbot or through a speaking interaction. The message that everybody else is getting is you don't need Debbie and Jen. These systems are going to do this. These systems are going to design your stuff. These systems are going to pretend to understand your customers. And so I think that the one of the key problems with AI is when it takes our job, a lot of us are going to be fake surprised. And I'm going to be going, you ushered that in. You brought that tool in because you were told it was going to make your job faster. You didn't realize that it was going to help not work there anymore because if that can do, let's say it's going to analyze research data, which I don't think AI does well, but let's just pretend. If someone brings in a tool to analyze research data, maybe we start wondering, what's Debbie doing? What's Jen doing? Why can't we have a marketer talk to some people and give it to the AI? Why can't the product manager call a few customers and give it to the AI? Why can't the AI chatbot a few customers and give it to itself? The thing is, a slippery slope argument is very often the sky is falling. We're going to marry toasters, with these weird things that you hear people say. Even though I'm admitting it's a slippery slope argument and therefore flawed or musing about an unknown future, it is possible that someone will say, I don't think we need Debbie, or I don't think we need Debbie as much because look, this AI claims to talk to our users and find out what they need.
Wow. Yeah. Scary stuff. I was having a conversation the other day with a former coworker, and they had a good point about AI replacing UX researchers. She mentioned that the actual conducting of the research is very much a small part of the whole end to end process. A lot of it is stakeholder management, gathering that context, not just coming up with a research plan, but there's a lot that goes into coming up with that research plan, that
Yeah.
holistic knowledge of the product or the bit line of business. So, thinking about those important soft skills that researchers have to tap into to even come up with a study, which the actual research study is a very small piece of all of that. Think about that context. How do you feel about
Except
AI taking our jobs?
Except NNG has a shitty article saying AI can do that for you.
Stakeholder management.
I don't know if it says stakeholder management, but it says ChatGPT can write your research plan.
I have heard of people creating a research plan using a tool like that.
Question I've been asking people to ask themselves around any aspect of democratization is, are you teaching your coworkers that your job is somewhat unnecessary or somewhat replaceable? I don't see me or you as replaceable by robots and LLMs and AI anytime soon. Maybe way out in the future, but as of now, no. And the funny thing is, even when I ask, the only AI I use right now, other than everyday things like Google Maps and Otter, like other than those obvious things, but the only AI thing I use right now is sometimes I'll ask stuff to Claude just to see what it says. And I wrote an article because I asked Claude, should AI do UX research? And it came back and said no. Claude claims to be very good at critical thinking and deductive reasoning. So I like to give it critical thinking questions to see what it does. And it gave me this whole critical thinking breakdown on why AI shouldn't do UX research.
Wow. What were some of the things, if you remember?
The human involvement of interacting with people and reading people, the idea of observing, which AI is not going to see people just yet, seeing people, hearing people. An example that I give is I have a question that I ask every LLM every time somebody says you have to try this AI. And I ask it, and as a researcher, you're going to make question face. I ask it, please give me the most compelling examples of word painting in Brahms' Requiem. Thank you for doing good neutral face. Requiem is a piece of music of the Romantic period by Brahms. It is a requiem, so it is a death related piece. And it is famous for being full of what we in music call word painting. Hello, degree in music. An LLM can only know examples of word painting from having been trained on articles, videos, academic papers, on other people saying, here's an example of word painting, whether or not it's accurate. Now, why do I pick this? Because I wrote a 20-page paper about it in college. Because I can hear the music, I can read the music, I can know stuff about the music. To me, this is akin to what a researcher is doing. A researcher is interacting with an orchestra and a choir and soloists and a conductor and an audience, and that's some of the stakeholder management that you're talking about. But it's also, if I'm talking to someone and they look like they're about to cry, I have information that the LLM is not going to get from being in that session live or checking a transcript later. That is something a human picks up about another human, or as you and I might say, a dog picks up about a human. But, and that's why I use this musical example to test LLMs, because it reminds me that it can't go into the music and say, I found my own example of word painting, regardless of what I was trained on. That's true artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is, I know how to analyze music, and I went into the score of Brahms' Requiem and I found an uncommon example of word painting. It doesn't do that yet, which means it cannot do that when you superimpose that example over human research experiences, whether those are in the field or over a call like this. And so that these are some of my warnings to people is like, AI could do your job, but it wouldn't do it well. And do we care if it should be done well? I do. Some people don't seem to.
And those who don't seem to don't know what it means to do it well.
That is often true, especially when they have more knowledge and familiarity with market or marketing research, where they say, well, we want to know more about users, send them a survey. Or we want to know about more about users, let's get 7 of them in a focus group. And, there's a song lyric that I always love to invoke at this point, which is, tell me what you think about this low fat diet crunchy shampoo. Tell me what you think about this low-fat diet shampoo. Do you think it's crunchy, half crunchy, or not crunchy at all? Put a tick in the appropriate box. Yes, those are song lyrics. If you think that that is the pinnacle of user feedback or user understanding or target audience discovery and investigation, then it's going to seem like AI can do some or all of that. But if you're more familiar with the power and capabilities around more conversation and observational based research, then you know that nothing replaces it. But if you're less familiar with that, or you've read some shitty product management book that makes it sound like UX research is calling some white guy and asking him what our product is missing, you have a beginner's understanding of it, but let's not pretend you have beyond that.
Right. And you mentioned it earlier, that context, right? That career context, that longitudinal understanding of a product or a service or what you've been researching is not something that an individual study can first reflect and two pivot on during that conducting that research. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, we had an interesting experience at my current job about a month ago when we were running some interviews, and we had accidentally run with a question some stakeholders had, and we hadn't fixed it, and that's my fault. And the questions were around like, in this interface, would you want to see an icon representing this? Would you want to see an icon representing this? Would you want to see an icon representing this? These are crappy questions, but I was in a rush and I kind of said, well, let's go with them and just see what people say. But when we started doing the interviews, of course, what do you think they answered? Yes to everything. And so we improvised a question. And when we realized we were all improvising it, we put it in the script. But then we said to people, what's the most number of icons you'd want to see next to this piece of information? And almost everybody said 3. We could have said, do you want to see this? Do you want to see this? We had a list of like 10 things that could have had an icon, and they were just saying yes to everything. But when we really asked them, and that to me is the critical thinking piece, would an LLM or an AI system have thought to realize, wait a minute, these questions aren't really getting at the right thing. The real question here is not, do you want to see an icon for this? Because it's yes to everything. It's, does it have to be surfaced at this place in the interface based on your task and your needs? And ultimately, for a lot of it, it was, I want to see that, but it doesn't have to be there.
So your stakeholders were looking for a validation of that icon, right?
Or they were looking for the green light to start putting a lot of icons in the interface or some sort of color coding. The exact solution wasn't pre-decided, but it sounded like they thought people want to see a lot more icons in this interface. And ultimately, we found that they did want to know some of that information, but it didn't have to be on the main screen. It could be one click away in a details overlay. But we had to find that out to tell them that, because otherwise I could very easily have seen this team, even with the best of intentions, because I do work with a great team that I genuinely like. I think they would have had the best of intentions in thinking, oh, this information helps people put these icons out here. And so you need that aspect of research. And otherwise, a less experienced researcher or AI, which is a very less experienced researcher, might have just said, hey, people want icons for all this stuff. Get the icons out there.
Yes, it ties to that idea of a PM or PO wants a very specific question answered. Will they use this? So they will ask that very specific question. And to you point, the person will say yes. Where a researcher knows that that's a bullshit answer and that people lie and will ask about other things around that to prove or disprove that hypothesis.
I don't like to say that people lie because I genuinely don't think people lie to us, but I do think sometimes they are polite. And the way that I like to explain this is when I speak live somewhere, if I have this particular slide in my deck, I wear this wacky Delta CX shirt that I'd custom made for me. And it's meant to look like a rugby uniform shirt with stripes on it and stuff. And I'll go up to someone in the front row and I'll go, do you like my shirt? And you see there's a moment of
Mhm.
panic in which they don't know whether they should be polite and say yes or more honest and say no. Maybe they don't know me. And very often they'll go, yes. And then I say, do you want one like this? And usually by then they know I'm having fun and they'll go, no. And I'll go, and you don't really like it, do you? And they'll go, no. And I go, and this is what happens. You know, when we do, if you do bad research, if you do you like my shirt? Yeah. Do you want one like this? Yeah.
That's a that's a very good example. I know I've seen that shirt in other instances as well. What do you wish that people knew about or had a better understanding about your job, your role when it comes to UX?
If I had one wish for that, it would probably be that good UX work, bad UX work is a little iffy. Good UX work has immediate value. It's not long term value. Yes, there's long term value, but I think too many people have been giving the messages for years that, oh, it's hard to know the value of UX work. And we're really not going to know for 1,000 years if the UX work was good. No. Thing one, I can tell you that day if the UX work is good. But secondarily, so can my team. When I go back to those stakeholders and I go, look, they love the ideas of your icons, but don't put on more than three, and you already have one on there, that means you get two more. That has immediate value because that is going to make them have to change a decision they were in the process of making. And that was X weeks from the time I got that question in our collaborative session where I gather the questions to when they got their answer. That means that has immediate value. We don't have to wait until this is released to the public. We don't have to wait until it's QA'd. This is now immediate value. And I think if people understood and were able to say out loud that both design and research and content and other work have immediate value, I immediately saved engineering so much work by not building something that we know now wouldn't work well for people. I saved the designer work because she didn't have to come up with 27 icons that turns out people don't really want. And so we are usually saving time and money, saving risk, saving waste, saving mistakes, saving failures. But that has value. And not everybody is remembering lately to give that value. They're just saying, oh, but failure is cool. We should fail fast. Okay, but I did business school and I don't remember them telling me your goal is to fail. I really wish people understood that there is value in saving time and money. There is value in talking an internal team out of a bad idea and going in a different direction earlier. These are awkward, these are difficult, these are sometimes unpleasant, but there's immediate value there. The one thing I wish everybody, even some of our own peeps, because they got gaslit into thinking, oh, UX, we're never going to show we have value. You're never going to know if my work has any value. I can prove immediately every damn day the immediate, short, and long term value of all of our work.
That's a really good point. I don't think we think about how our research results are providing immediate value by perhaps
Yes.
changing direction. Do you have another example with people who are watching this? They may not think about how can I show immediate value in the work that I'm doing?
Obviously, here I'm talking a little bit more about the evaluative research where we've got a prototype, we're showing it to people, and we're getting that feedback. And that's a good place to start. If your company is not doing research, start with the evaluative. And eventually, when you can show that value, which should be immediate, then you can say, hey, imagine if we did research ahead of time and we actually knew more stuff before we went into ideas or features or designs. I think about generative example. We did a project in early 2023 at Delta CX where we had a startup come to us. They'd been funded and they couldn't find product market fit. They were under pressure to figure out what did they need to build. They had a general idea that I wanted to address a certain topic for a certain audience. We have this as a case study on our site, though it's a little vague and mysterious because it's a startup, but we went out and we did generative research. We didn't evaluate a prototype. We didn't show anyone a Figma file. This was just early discovery generative stuff. And we were able to come back to them with what they asked us to do, which was not just a research report and problem statements. So we had 30 something problem statements, but we had our high level suggestions for solutions for those problem statements. We created a business model for them. We mapped an ecosystem for them. There was a whole mountain of stuff that we did, and we did that in 6 weeks. And that's a company that had been struggling for some time. And so when I think about what is the immediate value of that early research, number one, it told them that the next thing they were about to do, which they told us what their next step was going to be, was the wrong step. So, at the very least, we've saved this startup from building something that their target audience absolutely doesn't want. Because we've spoken to 35 of those people from all over the country, and they don't want that. They very much don't want that. And so, that's a good example, in my opinion, even though it's a little vague because it's a startup in stealth mode where we can. Again, have immediate value by telling that, and also having the case study about how they went out and did coffee shop interviews while we were doing our project. And when we came back for the final discussion and they had done their interviews and we had done ours, they said, well, we just found that everybody wasn't motivated. So we're thinking we need to build a motivation platform. And I said, did you find out why they're not motivated? Well, then everybody's looking at each other and they realized they didn't know why people weren't motivated. And I said, behavioral typology number one is the unmotivated, but they're not unmotivated for a reason you can change. Their life is so effed up right now, they can't focus on this topic. There's nothing you can do to get them focused on this topic. Shit's upside down. You're going to have to wait for their life to settle, and then they'll be in typology 2 or 3. But we don't think you should try to attract that target audience. We think your target audience are typologies 2, 3, 4, and 1 is on this end of the bell curve for these reasons, and 5 is on this end of the bell curve for these reasons. And so I think of that as an example of where we gave a startup a lot of data about the target audience related to this topic and these tasks, where they could make a better decision about the direction to go in. And that's being solution agnostic. That's no idea, hypothesis, no prototype, no dev build.
Right. Yeah. Completely generative research. You brought up something there that made me think. Do you know why? I find that people think they know why. We look at analytics. We see they're on this page. This is why. It's like, no.
They're
How,
guessing.
Right. Talk a little bit more about how people think they understand the why, but they really don't get to that.
Yeah, people tend to think they understand the why because they come up with a good sounding guess. Anybody could make any guess about anybody. Why is Debbie wearing a hoodie when it's 80 degrees at her desk? You could make up all kinds of reasons for that. The real reason is I put on my shittiest stained shirt and I didn't want you to see it. But, you know, but without knowing that, people might say, "Oh, Debbie likes to wear dark colors. Oh, Debbie likes to wear something with her logo on it. Oh, insert thing here." Now, all of these sound pretty good. And so we look at each other in meetings. We go, "Yeah, that's probably what's going on." We talk about this when I do my behavior trigger slides, which I'm going to do again in a future webinar. I just wrote it down. It's one of my oldies but goodies, but we tend to make up things when we don't know. And if they sound good, we assume they're probably true. And that's why that reminds me of another one because I just did this. And it reminds me of on Instagram, someone sent me an Instagram where some UX researcher I'd never heard of, some junior person was trying to be an influencer. And they said, "Oh, if you ever see a person touch the back of their neck or touch the back of their ear, they're uncomfortable and you should ask them why they're uncomfortable." And I was like, thing one, that will make people feel extremely scrutinized.
Yeah.
Thing two, I've had a rash behind my ear for about 20 years. If you ever watch my videos, I'm doing this all the time. It is not because I'm uncomfortable. I've got this thing that nothing can kill. But that sounds interesting. That sounds very psychological. That sounds learned. And so someone might say, if you see someone touch the back of their neck or play with their hair or touch their ear, they must be uncomfortable. And we should dive into the problem is we go into a lot of these meetings and we have guesses, assumptions, and opinions that sound logical, sound possible, and we fall in love with them and we don't treat them as true hypotheses or treat them as assumptions or guesses. We treat them as that's probably true.
Right. That's the difference between a good researcher and a not so great researcher is surfacing those assumptions and calling out and identifying those assumptions.
I tell people it's the difference between opinions, guesses, and assumptions and evidence, data, and knowledge. Because even if that is your opinion, what's your evidence or data? How do we really know? Because anybody could make up a reason. Then you could ask, why is Debbie wearing her stained and disgusting shirt when she's recording a show with Jen? That's because Debbie is lazy, but but you could make up other things. I once had a disagreement with a product manager in 2014 when she sent me this email. She said, "Oh, users are not going to like this thing you designed." And I wrote back and I said, "How do you know?" And she couldn't answer that because it was really just her opinion. She really just wanted it to look different. And I get that. We all have opinions, we all have design ideas, but we should be going with the evidence based ones. Even Scrum says be evidence based. Do use, like lots of things from Scrum to business school and other things will say, how about the scientific method? We should be using good evidence for strategies, priorities, and decisions. And yet we mostly go by opinions, guesses, and assumptions.
Yeah. It's easier, right?
But then we're fighting over it. So on the surface, it's easier. But if you say, look, the user didn't do this thing because they're lazy and we have to motivate them. And I say, no, the user didn't do this thing because they're broke and we have to help them save money. And someone else says, no, the user didn't do this thing because they had a bad day and we should say something encouraging to them. Which one is it? And so the problem is the opinions feel like an easy way to go, but then we start fighting over the opinions. And because we don't have the evidence, data, and knowledge, sorry, usually my graphics come up and they're not today. So it looks like this, but that's where we end up fighting. And I think a lot of people who've been in research and design jobs have been in those fights where we've said, well, we're going to design it like this because of what we know about our users. And someone else will say, but I think they'll like this better. And I go, but that's just an opinion. I've got a slide, the slide with two trees on it and my dog. Then you will remember, be careful when you're fighting over opinions. Jen thinks it's this. Debbie thinks it's this. Sally thinks it could be this. Then you don't have the evidence. You have unanswered questions about your users, systems, technology, internal processes, whatever it is. If you are guessing, hypothesizing. You don't know. And that's when you should have the researchers go find out.
Yeah, I was just going to follow say that very thing. If you had done generative research and answered that question beforehand, there wouldn't be the debate as to what the user wants.
Exactly. If someone had been interviewing me and said, "Tell me more about why you chose that black hoodie today," then we would know.
And it's over, right? The debate is over, and we can move forward with building a product that answers that need.
Whatever it might be, because a good UX person is solution agnostic. We don't ultimately care what the solution is. It doesn't have to be the idea we had. It doesn't have to be an idea that we thought. It's like it, or we go into it with no idea. It just has to be right for the users, and we're not the users.
Right. That kind of plays into your philosophy when you talk about good UX folks are solution agnostic. That kind of plays into your mantra of low ego action hero, right?
I hope so. That was something from one of my old books where I'd been hearing a lot from non UX people. Oh, my UX person is a diva. My UX person is a egomaniac. My UX person, blah, blah, blah. And I just said, we have to be low ego. There's no room in UX for high egos. I'm not sure what job should have high egos. Nobody likes to work with that person, especially since we're often presenting bad news and opposing viewpoints. We've really got to make sure it comes off as being not related to, well, I like it this way or something ego based. But we also have to kind of save the day. And that's where I said action hero. That's where I came up with low ego action heroes, was really just combining two totally separate things and seeing if they worked together, and peanut butter and chocolate do work together. That's how I ended up with low ego action hero, because I want to be low ego about stuff. I don't want to make anything about me, but I also feel like sometimes I got to come in and save the day in a small or large way, but then be low ego about it. You can't be like, look, everybody, I saved the day.
I love that. So you mentioned something earlier about doing this research and helping the team form a direction or perhaps change direction. And I can speak from experience where I have provided findings or a point of view or recommendations and flat out rejected. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, I do. When I first started the job I'm at now, I had an unpleasant stakeholder who I think was on a bit of a, let's say, high ego adventure. And I had a meeting with this person a few weeks into working there, and I was talking about the type of research we would be doing and how we would be feeding that back to the stakeholder team and the designer and all these other people. And he looks across the table at me and he says, you know, when you come back with your report on what to change, I might not let any of these changes happen. And here I was, like 2 weeks into a new job, and this high level stakeholder is saying this to me. But some of you know me. And so I said, if you do that, I will write up a risk document with your name all over it, saying that we have evidence that certain aspects of the design are not right for the users, and that continuing in this direction could be risky and wasteful, and that this is now knowledge that we have, and this would then be risk, and I would want to make sure that risk is associated with you personally.
Take that.
Not everybody will say that to someone, and not everyone should say that to someone. But that's what I decided to say, for better or worse. And it didn't come to that point, because when I spoke to some other people and I said, so and so said this, and all of them had the same reaction, which was, he doesn't have the power to make that decision. It's also good to remember, if you do hear that from somebody, are there other stakeholders who are going to treat your research report or evidence differently? And I have about 10 people in my inner circle and probably 50 in my outer circle. So if that guy says that, maybe it's a good time to check with a couple of other people who's got that power, because it might not be him.
Interesting. So it sounds to me like he just wanted to put you in your place.
Yeah, he was definitely that kind of guy. Luckily, he gave notice in November. I'd started the job in August, and so I didn't have to deal with him for very long, and that was good. I don't know why he left, but that was fine by me. And that was not a person I enjoyed working with and do not miss. And so, no names named. He did want to put me in my place, and I think he was doing that to other people. And a lot of us thought it was just us until we started comparing notes.
Yeah, that happens for sure. Oh,
Yeah.
well, bye. Good riddance.
Yeah, ciao ciao. And so when he gave notice, I think I jumped up and down for a few minutes. That was very exciting. And then by Thanksgiving he was gone. I'm very lucky, at least for the next few weeks, that the job I'm at has been one of the best I've ever been at, and that I haven't had to explain myself all day. I'm surrounded by intelligent people who want to do the right things, and they've moved deadlines to do the right things. This is so incredibly rare right now, but it shouldn't be. Why should we keep a crappy deadline to release something that's not quite right or ready? That's become status quo at so many companies where it's just so deadline focused. And at least I'm somewhere where they really, at least the project I'm on, I can't speak for anything else, but they really want to get this right. And I'm for that, I admire the people around me who continue to make good decisions. And like I had a conversation a few weeks ago, a high level BA said to me, "Oh, I've got a few tickets marked blocked by UX research. I'm waiting for you to tell me more about these things so we can make some decisions for the requirements." I was like, thank you. Another interesting thing that's happened at my job is when I first got there, everyone was saying UI, UX. And I just started saying UX. And now everybody says UX. I never had to come out with a PowerPoint. I never had to come out with a Nielsen Norman Group maturity model. I never had to say, read my book. I said, we actually don't really call it UI, UX. They're two separate things. But in general, I just called everything the right things UX. And now people say UX. It's like you can create change without having to show up with a PowerPoint.
Guide by example.
I'm just living it. I found that our designer was being treated a little bit too much like an order taker. And I went to her and I said, do you like it doing it this way, or do you want to be more of a problem solver? She said, no, I want to be a problem solver. So I just started dropping wherever I could. We're going to give it to the designer to explore a solution for that. And then people will be like, oh, yeah, that'll be great. We look forward to seeing that. And here's something interesting we found, and we're going to have the designer come up with two different ways to approach that. Oh, yeah, we'd like to see these things. Now, I didn't have to show a PowerPoint on empowering UX. I just said, let's do this. And even though I've spent more years as a designer than a researcher, I never told her what to do. I just said, let's just give her problems and let her solve them. And if she wants my input, I'll give it. I want to empower her. What does that look like?
And I think a lot of that is legacy. A lot of that is just maybe the product owner traditionally and through time has come up with these solutions and therefore just handed it over to the designer. And that's just the way it's been.
At an organization like where I am now, which is a university, it was like the BA was writing stuff into the requirements. And then the UX designer would have to make something that matches those requirements. And so I remember stuff like that much earlier in my career. Now I think we struggle more with a product manager or product owner who says, hey, I have a cool idea. Let's just build it. And we're going, what you talking about, Willis?
Where'd that come from?
Che cavolo stai dicendo? Is that what it was? Yes, I'm getting thumbs up.
I have one final question. What do you hope the future of UX includes or looks like?
I hope that it includes problem finding and problem solving. No matter what, we're still going to need problem solvers and problem finders and problem solvers. Strategic problem finders, strategic problem solvers. Whether we call them UX or service designers or product management turns into UX and service design or CX strategist. I'm less hung up on what the title of the job is. I'm looking at the job description, and I would like to see more jobs that are about strategically finding and solving problems for everybody in the experience ecosystem, the business, the users, the customers, the resellers, the dog. Whoever's on that ecosystem map is going to need problems found and solved, both internally and externally. So my hope is that the future of it can get back to more problem finding and solving and away from either everything AI or away from everything democratized or away from we're pretty Figma order takers.
Thank you for that perspective. That sounds like a great thing to vote for in the future. Please, please. Debbie, thank you so much for your time. This has been a great conversation as always.
Yes, thank you as always. Thank you, viewers and watchers and listeners and people.
And all the things.
All things to all people.
Check out all my interviews with industry leaders on BlatzChatz.